Welcome back, everybody, to today's conversation. We're talking decentralized recovery once again here with members from the DeRec Alliance. And this is an effort to fix one of the biggest problems in our digital lives. We've all been there. You lose a password, a wallet, or an account, and suddenly it feels like the keys to your life are gone because they are. Recovery today is stressful and often impossible, especially in the blockchain world. DeRec aims to and will change that by creating a universal, decentralized, agnostic standard that works everywhere, quietly protecting people in the background. Joining me today, three incredible voices: Dr. Lehman Baird, co-founder of Hedera, one of the original mind behind DeRec, chief scientist at Hashgraph; John Wingate, founder and CEO of Bank Social; as well as Brandon Wolf, who is new to this show. And welcome, Brandon, GM at Lace and IOHK Ecosystem Cardano as well. We're going to be exploring why recovery matters now. So I guess as we kick off, super low-hanging fruit question: why is it now? Why is now the moment to finally fix digital recovery? And maybe I'll go with you, Brandon, first. You're the guest of honor. Never had you on before, so I'd love your thoughts.
Very flattering. Thank you very much. Great to be here and good to see everybody. So why is now the moment to fix digital recovery? I think digital recovery has kind of lagged behind the rest of the Web3 revolution. We've evolved in how we store value, how we interact with apps, how we verify identity. But when it comes to recovery, most people are stuck with seed phrases scribbled on pieces of paper stuck in their desk drawers. And that's just not scalable, right? So it's definitely not going to pass the mom test. Institutions aren't going to adopt it. Mainstream's not going to adopt it. So we've hit this inflection point where blockchain technology has matured enough to be genuinely useful for everyday people. But the recovery experience is still stuck in the Stone Age, like I mentioned. And centralized recovery models, well, they leave you completely dependent on companies that might not exist in 5 years or are vulnerable to data breaches or account takeovers. So now when you have DeRec, we finally have found a way to decentralize recovery without compromising usability or privacy. It's a missing piece that brings Web3 up to par with the reliability that people expect from Web2.
Awesome. That's about as succinct and clear-cut answer as we could ask for. Lehman, I would love your take.
Yeah, if we just take a step back, the whole digital world, there's Web3, there's even more things. What are the foundations for all the safety and security and what our whole lives are going to be? Well, you've got passkeys, much better than passwords for getting into accounts. You've got Web3, you have stable coins and cryptocurrency and real world asset tokenization. Eventually, everything in the world is going to become a token. And everything that you might want to have, you will have as a token. And then you've got identity, where you can prove electronically that you are you. Or you can keep anonymous, but prove that you are over 21, or anonymous and prove that you're a citizen of a certain country, or you've been KYC'd in a certain way, or even anonymous when you have an account on a social media, but you can prove that you don't have an army of fake sock puppet accounts. You only have one. So identity and Web3 tokenization and passkeys for getting into websites, these are the foundational three things that make our whole digital life possible. And they all have the same Achilles heel. You have some kind of a secret you have to protect. And if you lose it, you lose everything. If I have passkeys to get into stuff and I lose my passkey, I can't get into stuff. And if someone steals it, they can get into stuff as me. If everything in the world of value is tokenized and I have keys that control it and I lose my keys, I've lost my life savings. I've lost everything. Or if someone steals it, they gain everything of mine. They can steal everything. And same thing for identity. If I lose the secret inside of my identity system, then I cannot prove that I am me. And if someone steals it, they can become me and steal my identity. So the entire digital world lies on three foundations, and they all have this common problem. If I have secrets, and if I lose the secrets, I lose everything. And if someone gets the secrets, they steal everything. And DeRec is that core thing. How can I have the secrets that it will back up for me in a way that doesn't let people steal it, but also make sure I won't lose it? That's what we need.
100%. John, your take on why now, finally, the moment to fix digital recovery?
Well, first, thank you for making me or letting me go after two of the smartest people in the world. So that are, kind of building this stuff. But I'll go a little bit into the use cases that we're seeing now that I think are really driving it from our end. And Brandon, you touched on it. Lehman, of course, you touched on it at a much higher level of just everything that is protected. But because institutions are starting to jump into this, we can't be in a place where people are managing their keys, or to Brandon's point, we're utilizing single company type of MPC solutions, or even where we're seeing some cases where keys are being stored in single locations like banking cores. These are not the solutions moving forward. At the same time, we need to bridge the gap of allowing for these new types of distributed systems to interact with these legacy core systems, these legacy digital banking systems, because as Lehman said, everything that we know will be tokenized. You know, your car, your loan on your house, your identity, all of your money in your bank accounts. And because these institutions are now jumping in full speed, I mean, since the Genius Act has launched, Becky, my co-founder, and I, we've talked to probably 10,000 different people at different financial institutions in the United States alone. And just next week are jumping out into a huge roundtable of 20 of the largest credit unions in the United States, that and financial institutions, some community banks as well, because they understand that they have to fully embrace what Congress has now made a stake in the ground that says we're moving forward with new systems. And if we don't fix the fundamental underlying problem of key storage and password and seed phrase and pass key management and identity, you know, all these things that are tied into secrets, we will not have a solution that scales effectively to the next 100 million, 200 million, billion, 5 billion users.
I want to kind of ask Lehman here a question, because yesterday, and I'll maybe relate this to real life. So I had to buy my oldest daughter a used, well, definitely a used car for her her first vehicle. But I like, it was a shocking experience to me, because like sometimes like in this space, it seems like there's so much happening, because there is, especially the past 12 to 18 months in blockchain and DLT and adoption. But then I step back and I'm like, we're still so early in adoption. And when I think about all the stuff that is actually going to be digitized and where we're at, like, you know, I had to, number one, use a check yesterday and had to drive home and get checks. And number two, basically, like, you know, she said, don't leave your title alongside this because your car could get whatever. So I guess, you know, the question I have in that regard is like, Lehman, since you first introduced DeRec, so much is changing with blockchain adoption, DLT adoption. So many institutions and enterprises are getting in. What's changed that makes you think that adoption of kind of a universal standard makes it more realistic today?
Yeah. So what we're seeing is a lot of people rolling it out or about to roll it out, including the people on this call, which is exciting. Why is this happening now? Because I think people are starting to really have reality sink in. Either you give the control of your entire life to someone else and hope for the best, or you keep control of your entire life yourself, and if you lose it, you lose your entire life. I mean, those are not good options. I don't want to give it to one person to control me, and I don't trust me to protect all these secrets. And as Brandon said, yeah, you just scribble it on a note and keep it in a desk somewhere. Yeah, what could go wrong? You have to break it up into pieces and give it to multiple parties, so that no one party can steal it, no one party can lose it. There's no option. There's no alternative. And I think now reality is sinking in as people are actually starting to make this part of their lives. They aren't just playing with cryptocurrency because it's fun and making pictures of Bored Apes because it's fun. They're actually starting to use this in the real world. And because we're using it in the real world, it matters. And that's why there are so many people now implementing DeRec, because reality is sinking in. When it was a game, it didn't matter. Now it's serious. Well, by the way, games are also serious. We can talk about that. But it's getting serious. That's why.
Awesome. Well, John, I want to ask you, because I know that you guys have an iteration of DeRec in kind of operation right now. So I would ask you, you know, what does it look like when you've showcased what DeRec is to users, or, you know, credit unions or different entities? Like, what does that look like for them when they experience it? Or is it kind of just like operating under the hood, I guess is the question.
Well, we have to make the experience as similar as an experience they would have now in their digital banking app. If you take them into a place where they're having to do a bunch of new things that they're not familiar with, you're not going to get the stickiness, you're not going to get the adoption rates. And so when I first heard Lehman speak about this, it was several years ago, I think 2 years ago at this point, and we were looking not necessarily DeRec, but looking to utilize credit unions, trusted institutions, as places to split apart secrets. And after a couple calls with Lehman, understood that DeRec, the methodology that Lehman had came up with, was the correct methodology to utilize in this distribution in this model. And so we looked at credit unions and financial institutions and said, to Lehman's point, or Brandon's point, if a company goes away, what happens? Well, we know that financial institutions, when we know that we can have a 5 of 10 or a 5 of 7 or some threshold of pieces be available, we know that these institutions don't degrade at that level, and they're going to be around for a much longer period of time generally than a company is going to be around, or a friend is going to be around, or even a device that maybe gets compromised is going to be around. And so we had to combine the simplicity of your existing digital banking experience and how you log in and how you open up a wallet, but not do it in a way that a single credit union or a single financial institution could ever access or could ever reconstitute the key alone. But do it in a way that also didn't feel like this all new experience where you were having to take a key and save it and write it down in 24 different pieces and not even know what that means. Because the vast majority of people, you got to think where they're coming from. They're not coming from a self-custody wallet either. They're coming from a Coinbase. They're coming from a Robinhood. They're coming from a Kraken. And when they step into their digital banking, if we create this whole new kind of self-custody experience and put something in the way, we're going to lack adoption. But it's balancing that with the risk of turning a credit union or a financial institution into a qualified custodian either, right? We can't do that either. And so this methodology gives us the balance, the really great balance of both, giving the user full control over their assets in a way that's recoverable for probably one of the longest periods of time if you study financial institutions being available that you could have, and gives us the resiliency that we need to build out this infrastructure that lasts for the length of time we need it to last.
I saw a tweet yesterday. This is not a sidebar, I guess more of a transition, from Charles Adkins, so head of the Hedera Foundation. And the tweet was, we have to stop using, and I agree with this, terminology that most people don't know, because like you naturally do it being in crypto, being in blockchain, you just start using words. And if you were to say that to 95, 98% of the people out there in the world, they would still be like, oh, what's a wallet? Like, and his post was basically trying to make the point, just refer to it as an account. And then if people are already comfortable with having accounts, they have multiple accounts, and then you talk about features of accounts and things like that. Anyways, Brandon, from your standpoint, I mean, at Lace and within IOHK and the Cardano ecosystem, and under the purview of DeRec, what do you think the biggest breakthrough is in making recovery or user experience safe but simple? I mean, we've been here since 2009. There's been a lot of maybe progress on account abstraction and stuff, but the general ethos of onboarding into blockchain and distributed ledger hasn't changed a lot. So like, where are we kind of at right now with simplicity and user experience, and why something like DeRec?
Yeah, so I think the magic is in making recovery invisible while keeping it cryptographically bulletproof. DeRec uses secret sharing. It splits your secret into encrypted fragments, these indecipherable shares, and distributes them across people and devices that you trust. Each share is independently useless. No single helper can see or access your actual secret. So you need only half of them to recover. So even if some helpers are unavailable or compromised, you're completely fine. Now, this all appeals to the geeks and the nerds in all of us, but the real breakthrough is that the helper rotation, the periodic verification, this all happens invisibly. And so you pick who you trust, your friends, your family, maybe a hardware device, and the protocol handles everything else. So users don't need to understand Shamir's secret sharing or threshold cryptography cryptography. They just need to know that what they want to protect and who they trust to help them recover it. That's it. It's a technical feat, absolutely. But more importantly, it's a UX one. And so from the wallet side, that's what we really lean in on. We don't want the users to have to understand how recovery works in order for it to save them. That's the real innovation.
Mm-hmm. I think it's an interesting point too, because there's so many people in so many areas of the world doing so many different things. Any one person that ends up, using blockchain or distributed ledger in the future is going to be doing something totally different, because we're all unique. We're all different. We all do different things. So I guess the question I have, Lehman, for you is like, why does a standard like DeRec kind of have to be able to work everywhere, across applications, across wallets, across platforms, instead of kind of being this static thing that just lives in one place?
We have to have interoperability. Why does the World Wide Web need to have a single standard where every browser can go to every website? Why can't we have America Online and CompuServe and Prodigy as little walled gardens? It doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is that you need to have interoperability so that anyone who owns a secret can go to anyone who's a helper willing to hold a piece of a secret, and they can work together. If we have walled gardens, then each walled garden just has a few helpers, and whatever your app you're using is stuck with those few helpers, and you can't go outside of that, and it makes a smaller attack surface, and attackers can easily, I should say the other way, attackers can more easily attack all your helpers if there's only a few that you could have chosen from. But if you can choose every helper in the world and everyone is interoperable, then no one's going to guess who your helper is, because there's a billion helpers out there. And you have a billion to choose from, and they can compete with each other. And every app, even a little tiny app with a small community, has access to the whole world of helpers. Look, let's be honest. Doing something like DeRec, anyone could do. Any cryptographer knows Shamir secret sharing. This is not rocket science. But if we have a million different standards that aren't standard, then we will never be able to reach the point where you automatically can have access to millions of helpers. We have to be interoperable. And that's why it makes no sense at all for there to be competing standards. And everyone we talk to says, oh, I want to join the DeRec Alliance. I want there to be one standard, and I'll help make that standard good. And because of so many people contributing, it is good. For example, it's post-quantum. Quantum computers can't break it. And we have key ratcheting, and we have key changes automatically so that you have perfect forward secrecy. All this cool stuff because we have many people contributing to the idea. So the main thing we need is just to make it one standard. It doesn't even matter what the standard is. It just has to be one standard. And the other thing we need is lots of contributors so that we know it's a good standard. And we have both of those. This is the right way to do it.
And I just to add to that, there's precedent in the market, with things like FDX, with, there's regulatory open banking compliance that's coming up around the world that this aligns extremely well with being able to, have the ability to, not just move your money, but move your secrets, move those things that are protecting your value from these institutions too. So I think there's also precedence for institutions coming together to do these things with payload standards like FDX, but even in open banking, and the governments are starting to drive some of this stuff. And I think this fits naturally into those contextual paradigms.
Oh yeah. Also, I should just mention, it's all open source. The standard is open source. You don't have to buy the standard. The code that implements it, and we've implemented it, is open source, and anyone can use it. And it's written in such a way that you push a button and it turns itself into many, many different languages. So you can do this in any language. You can do it on any mobile platform. You can use this code. And if you use this core library that works on every mobile, every browser, every different language that you want to call it from, as long as you use this, you're guaranteed to be interoperable. So we have made it very easy, very open. Everything is free. We're not making any money off of any of this stuff. The whole thing is just as a service to the world.
I think, when not really a question, more so kind of just a thought process. And I think that we're at really kind of this interesting inflection point as like a society where, we talk about kind of the low hanging fruit, even like from a tokenization and real world asset standpoint, we talk about low hanging fruit all the time. But I think that we're headed towards a place where our individual data is represented as a real world asset. Basically, like, right now this is going to get posted onto Twitter, and Twitter is a free platform because everybody that uses Twitter is the product of Twitter. So like, I do think, when we think about the importance of protecting our assets, I think that it's not just about, cryptocurrencies or different things. It is like anything that can be password protected, even like digital identity and things like that, I think are going to be essential, because it would really suck. I mean, a lot of people's livelihoods right now are based on their personality even. So I want to kind of move and ask, John, I'm going to move over to Bank Social with another question. What's the biggest lesson you guys have learned so far in putting the DeRec protocol into practice with real people or real entities?
The biggest lesson that we learned is that when we went to financial institutions, so many of them had the question of, custody, right? That's kind of their first question is, who's the custodian? Am I entrusting this with a single company that is holding the keys, right? Or is there some other am I holding all the keys? Am I holding this on my balance sheet? And what we learned was by bridging that gap of, no, it's not a custodian over here who may be qualified or may not be qualified or whatever. It's not the person who's holding their own keys and having to just rely on their own management of it. And it's not you holding the keys. It's a combination of those things working in tandem, giving self-control and self-custody to the consumer, to the member. We call them members in credit unions, but also allowing for the financial institution to be a part of the value creation, right? They're not just allowing people to buy cryptocurrency or tokenized value and extract it from their system. They're becoming part of the value chain. When we learned that difference in the deployment was what made a difference to the financial institution, everything clicked, everything turned on. And that really has been the driving force in our ability to take, initially it's our stablecoin payments platform and our Prospera investing platform. Those two systems utilize this DeRec multi-party compute key distribution helper network that puts those key helpers into our credit unions. When we understood that differentiator right there checked every box for these financial institutions, we knew we had something powerful. And that's why we continue to work with the DeRec Alliance on this and figure out how we can create more interoperability, more security, more protection, more distribution as we bring on more and more credit unions. To Lehman's point, having more helpers that are interoperable with even more helpers outside of the ecosystem just provides more resiliency to the system. So that was the biggest lesson that we learned was that by positioning this as a differentiator, and not having to get into all the details of how it works technically, but that by saying the self-custody aspect still exists, the credit union or the financial institution is not having to take on the liability of the balance sheet. And no one credit union, by the way, if their helper appliance gets corrupted, no problem, right? The system is not compromised. These are the types of things that helped us, that were the lessons that we learned as we implemented to help us know that we were on the right track and we were building the right solutions.
I think similar question I guess in that same vein, I'll move over to Brandon and ask, how do you think we convince everyday users, whether they're retail individuals or whether they're big institutions and enterprises, to trust a standard like DeRec and decentralized recovery, either over an old password reset model, or in crypto over, write it on a piece of paper and say, and hope nothing happens?
Yeah, that's a great question. And John touched on it earlier in terms of the really what we need to do is start with familiarity, something that is familiar to the user. So you build these experiences that feel like the forgot password that we all know and use, but under the hood, they're private, they're secure, and they don't really rely on any type of central authority. So instead of emailing some company and hoping they verify you correctly, you're reaching out to your trusted circle. And once people see that they can recover their wallet or account without relying on some faceless corporation that could be hacked or go out of business, like we mentioned, that just clicks. And so it's actually more intuitive than the current system. When you think about it, you're trusting people you actually know. Now, for institutions, I would say it's all about auditability, control, and liability. They're tired of being honeypots for hackers and holding the keys to everyone's kingdom. I think DeRec offers a model where they can participate as a helper or verifier in a recovery flow without ever being responsible for storing the actual secrets. So that fundamentally changes the security model and dramatically reduces their exposure, which is going to be an appealing take for them. They're not liable for safeguarding your private keys. They're just one piece of a larger puzzle. Once you show them that it's possible to eliminate account recovery fraud and account takeover attacks while they're actually improving their user experience, I think that becomes a no-brainer. So it's better security, better UX, less liability, and it's a pretty easy sell.
Lehman, what's the single biggest unlock that you feel like is going to happen once DeRec as a universal recovery standard is in place?
The real unlock is that people get the safety net that they're already assuming they have when they don't have it. And that's a big deal. And if there's a rude awakening for enough people, they are going to abandon all these potentially great things because they say, oh, I understand, everyone gets burned when they try it. You have a safety net throughout your life. If you lose the keys to your bank or your credit union, you can get your money back eventually. If you lose the keys to your car, you can get a guy to come and open it for you and you can get the keys changed. If you lose the keys to your house, you can put a brick through the window and get into the house. Everywhere in our life, we have a safety net. You lose the keys to your crypto, you've lost it. You will never get it back. You lose the keys to your pass key. You lose the ability to get into accounts. You lose your keys to your identity. And now you can't prove that you are you. You have a serious problem. And this gives you the safety net that you thought you had. People just assume they have it. You're trained from birth. There's always a safety net, and you don't have it in this world. And so it gives people that, and it enables them to use this the way they use everything else in their life. And of course, this means it needs to be automatic and invisible. We've only alluded to that. We need to say it out loud. You need to have it that when you sign up for an account with this credit union, you get helpers without even knowing about it and having to understand, what is Shamir Secret Check? You don't have to know any of that stuff. You get the helpers. And then as you become more expert, maybe you can go into a menu and you can say, I'd like some more helpers and I'd like to choose my helpers and remove the old ones. And you have control over all that, but you at least get it invisibly and automatically from the beginning. This is what unlocks this to be safe for ordinary people. And I'm saying people as in ordinary individuals who have never had any contact with this stuff. It's also true for corporations. They have their own secrets that need to be managed. And it is a disaster if the entire savings of your entire corporation and everything you own accidentally gets lost. That's not a good thing. And again, corporations assume their safety nets. And what you need is for this automatic, invisible safety net to be provided. And that unlocks this whole digital world for everyone, not just Web3, not just identity, everything.
And just piggybacking off of that, that's exactly what happens in our product when people come into the credit union app, when they come into one of our credit union apps. And what it results in is people are utilizing the system just like they would utilize another system, but they're getting all the benefits of having that segregated self-custody wallet with all the protections of the DeRec helpers behind it. So they're not going to have the risk of losing those keys in the event of oh, my safe burned, or oh, I misplaced the piece of paper. That doesn't exist anymore in this world that we're moving into. And Lehman, you said it too. It's not just for crypto keys, right? It really can be these are almost like new digital deposit boxes for credit unions. And so when we look at the ecosystem and how it's going to evolve, the opportunity to build more services and more features into DeRec. Data is cheap, right? Data storage is probably the cheapest thing that you can have. And so it doesn't have to be in the immediate second. Everything that you need has to be immediately recoverable in 1 second. It would be okay if you put away a big storage or a cache of data that needed to be protected and recoverable immutably forever, right? And if it took an extra minute or two to get it back, you would be okay with that as a company. And so this also opens up a whole new wave of services and features. And that was the other learning that we had when we went to our credit unions and we presented this as a digital deposit box. The whole idea was, don't teach them something new. Like, don't try to tell them they're doing something new. Tell them they're doing something they've been doing their whole lives at these credit unions, right? This is the same thing you've been doing, just in a new way, right? Those were the lessons that we learned and how we're seeing that actually manifest. We've seen credit unions where people weren't even buying crypto or investing in stocks, investing in crypto, and they're now doing it in these self-custody wallets, and they can because they don't have to save a key. And then, I can't tell you how many people we get from outside ecosystems that they come to us and we have our secure recovery and all that kind of stuff. And they say, what is my key, right? They've been doing self custody for a year or two, and they don't even know where their key is. They think it's their public key. They don't know the difference between a private key and a public key, or the seed phrases and all that. We eliminate all those questions, but we also provide that self custody aspect and the resilience of the key.
You know, John, you actually touched this time in the previous answer with another kind of unlock. I mentioned unlock for the users, for the consumers, and for the businesses that are users that have secrets that need to be protected. It unlocks safety for them and lets them use all this stuff. But you pointed out that it isn't just the users of a service, it's also the service providers of that service that it unlocks things for. Because now a credit union doesn't have to be a custodian of your digital assets. And that unlocks the ability for them to help people that they couldn't help before and offer services they couldn't offer before because they didn't want to be a custodian, and they also didn't want to set up their users for failure and have self-custody where the users are almost guaranteed to start losing stuff. They couldn't do either of those. And so it unlocks for them something that was literally locked before. They just couldn't be a custodian, and they just couldn't inflict an unsafe system on their users. Neither of those were an option. And now that users can be self-controlling it, self-custody, and yet be safe, that unlocks a whole world for the service providers. New ways to earn money, new ways to bring in new customers. That's a whole kind of unlock that I didn't even mention that you talked about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And you guys kind of took my next question, which is always great. You did some work for me here. But you know, I think when we think about like the power of networks and like a snowball rolling downhill and kind of that network effect, it's not just the end users, but it's that relationship management and that kind of tree that grows out from the network providers themselves. I know, Lehman, you mentioned earlier interoperability. DeRec in and of itself is going to probably spark a lot of interoperability just because of the pure nature of it being an open standard that multiple, networks are going to use in kind of an agnostic way. I guess to kind of lead us into the road ahead here, because I know all three of you gentlemen are pretty busy, so we probably have about 15 minutes left. I want to ask whoever wants to take it, maybe Lehman first. How soon do you think people are going to be utilizing, and I know, John, you guys have this in practice already, but how soon do you think people are going to be using DeRec on a daily basis without even knowing it, Lehman?
Yes. So thousands right now, and it's just going to grow very very rapidly. And it has to be invisible and using it without knowing it. We need to make a path for the expert users to learn so that they're aware of it and they can intervene in various ways on their own. But that's not the first step. We have to onboard them where it's automatically invisible. And so we currently have lots of people using a version of this, and they will be using better versions of it. And then there will be more people doing it. And it's thousands today as we speak, but it's going to grow exponentially. It will be millions just in a blink of the eye. It really will be. And it has to be. We have to, as a civilization, as a worldwide spanning civilization, humanity has to make it where you can use the promise of the digital world without the current threats. We have to solve this problem. Otherwise, it's just a disaster.
Yeah, I think it'll happen sooner than we think. I mean, I love hearing John talk about, all the great work they're doing over at Bank Social and the momentum that's bringing. Exciting to watch. We've got it on our public roadmap. We've had it on our public roadmap for a while, launching in 2026 for the Lace wallet. So we're definitely not alone. I mean, other wallets and platforms across all ecosystems are moving in the same direction. So the whole point is to make it, recover seamless and backgrounded, like your phone backing up photos to the cloud, but for your keys and secrets. You just don't have to think about it. Until the moment you need it, and then it just works. So I think by this time next year, you're right, Lehman. I think we'll start seeing real momentum across the industry, multiple wallets, applications, maybe even some unexpected use cases that are going to come as a result of this, which is exciting to think about. So the goal is in a few years, people won't even know they're using DeRec. They just know that recovery works, it's secure, and they're in control.
John, any thoughts? I mean, you guys are already have this in kind of operation, but
yeah. We've got thousands of people that have been using it for several months now, and we have 40 financial institutions right now. Several of them are in the process of rolling this out, and so we expect to see this come on in tranches of 100,000, 100,000, 150,000, 300,000, 5. So I agree with Lehman. I think we'll get this we'll get this exponential, especially as wallets like Hashpack and Lace and some of these other ecosystem wallets start to implement it. We make it interoperable. You start to make open banking a reality where somebody can be in one wallet. And I personally do, just to kind of segue back to what we were talking about, I think wallet might be a better explanation because I keep my ID in there, I keep coupons in there, I keep so many other things than just bank account information's in there, right? But and that's why I'm using that nomenclature. But I see this over the next probably 6 to 8 months, just in the ecosystems that we know about, exponentially driving value, not just users onboarding, but value. I think in the stuff we're talking about where we're coming up with use cases, we're going to see the dollars and the value being tied to the use cases itself for the people implementing, for the people storing the keys, the helpers actually storing the components. I think we're going to see value created all over the place in the next 6 to 8 months.
Awesome. And I'll ask, maybe just, this is like a really low hanging fruit question. What's the most surprising place? I hate whenever I like write a question and I know the answer to the question before I ask it. What's the most surprising place you expect recovery to show up? Something like DeRec, whether it be banking, healthcare, IDs, or even video games. And I know everybody's answer here, but whoever wants to take it first, because I'll stop talking. Lima, let me ask you. I'll ask you first.
Sure. So it's funny. It's wherever there are secrets that people don't even realize there are secrets. That's what's surprising. And I have had people tell me, the world's going to stop having to have a password you have to remember. We're just going to go to passkeys and then there's no secret. Yeah, a passkey is a secret on your phone. It's ones and zeros that you have to keep secret. That's what it is. Or someone will say, well, we don't have to worry about secrets. We'll just have identity. Yeah, but identity only works. DIDs and all that stuff only works if you have a secret, some ones and zeros that you know and no one else knows. and video games. I have assets in my video game and I want to be able to buy and sell it and move it to other video games and have some ownership of it. Well, the definition of ownership is that you have something no one else has, which means a secret. People don't even know that everything that's the foundation of the future digital world involves something you control, which by definition means it has to be something that they don't know. And so DeRec will back up these things, and you will have it in video games, you mentioned, because you have something of value and it has to be a secret and you don't want to lose it. I mean, it really is a value. If you spend 10,000 hours earning stuff in a video game, you can say it's not real, but it was real. You spent real time on it and you should own it. And if you lose it, that's a bad thing. And if someone steals it, that's a bad thing. Things in a video game are real. They aren't real guns and swords and magic wands, but they are real assets. They are real. So,
and valuable too. Losing those could be devastating. So yeah, I definitely think gaming is going to surprise everyone with this. I also think that healthcare and identity are going to be huge. We're baking in DIDs. We're building Lace ID as part of the wallet to become part of that journey that users take. So the way we look at it is if I can recover cryptographic keys or to my wallet, why not credentials to my medical records and my verified digital ID? These are secrets, like Lehman said, worth protecting, maybe even more so than some cryptocurrency that you may hold. So the beauty is DeRec isn't just a crypto tool. It's a universal primitive for any secret, any password, any piece of sensitive data you want to keep secure but recoverable. So yeah, I agree with you, Lehman, completely. And so, we want to try to be able to protect those keys on any distributed ledger network, Ethereum, Cardano, Hedera, Ethereum or Bitcoin, whatever, you name it. But we can also protect the things that have nothing to do with blockchain. So that versatility means, we have something that can show up in places we haven't even imagined yet.
I love it,
All right,
Brandon.
I'm going to get
the building. That is just so great. And yes, DeRec can help with that too. I love it.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to get real philosophical and crazy here. And you guys might think I'm crazy, but I'm going to go out like 5-10 years where potentially, we have neural links with secrets in our head, and we want to be able to store those secrets because we're thinking about things, in 10 to 15, maybe 20 years, I can see a place where we're cloning our thoughts into AIs and making decisions. Those AIs are making decisions on our behalf. And this is crazy, but you asked for where's the most surprising place we could see DeRec. This may be the most surprising place we could see DeRec is the secrets in my head that I want to store away for long periods of time, but have recoverable, that's a crazy place that we could see it. And I would be very surprised if it showed up there, but it could show up in a place even like that, right? Where as neural links and as data starts getting more biological and connected biologically, I think we could potentially, I would be surprised, but I think we could see it there.
Yeah. So for context, I knew that everybody's answer was going to be everywhere. Before I asked the question. So I also want to give just briefly, and then we're gonna do round robin closing thoughts here. But as we just did a month ago, we did a podcast with Mark from the Algorand Foundation, head of strategy, and they mentioned, because they just announced their own wallet, which I think is, and I always mispronounce it, I think it's Roca. That was going to be an implementation of DeRec as well. So I mean, this is kind of spanning, as we've mentioned, this entire time across ecosystems in a very agnostic and kind of natural way, which is pretty cool. And I think, I had a question here about, will it change? Will something like DeRec change what people expect from the internet itself? But I think what ends up happening is people just end up using it because it's better, and because it works, and because it's decentralized, and it's, I think back to when my wife, and then I'll do round robin with you guys here. My wife, like a year and a half or 2 years ago, she lost access to her Google account, but like the recoverer to her own Google account was her, and she couldn't gain access back. So she had to create an entirely new account, which is like, that doesn't really work. Luckily she didn't have anything crazy on there, but I'm sure there's horror stories out there where, think about what you have on Google and stuff like that. And, anyways, so let me do round robin here, and I want to thank all three of you guys for taking the time out today. Brandon, maybe just closing thoughts from you. What's going on within LACE, IOHK, DeRec as a whole? And thank you so much for joining today, and hopefully this isn't the last time we have you. Would love to have you back.
Well, I'd love to be back, and thank you for the opportunity to talk today, and great to talk with all of you, Lehman and John. It's been a great panel. I would say, just some things that are coming from the IO world. I mean, we talked about privacy a little bit. We are now launching the Midnight. There's an entire thing about Midnight that we're launching. We're going to see how we can leverage this and possibly utilize this along with DeRec. So there's a lot of technical viability to explore in that realm. We're excited about it. We are building LACE ID. Our mobile launch is going to be in the next few months. So we're going to be launching we've been a browser extension for a while. We're going to be launching into mobile, and then LACE identity, using the Hyperledger Identities framework as kind of our hotbed for that. That's going to bring, I think, a lot of utility and value to users in the DApp ecosystem. So we're leveraging hard on DeFi and DeFi 2.0 and bringing in Bitcoin. We're going multi-chain in our wallet, so we're not just Cardano, but Cardano is our kind of where we live. But I think with the DeRec world, it may be one of those unsexy infrastructure problems that doesn't get enough attention, but it's absolutely foundational to everything we're trying to build in Web3. So we want to be a part of that, and not just make better wallet or build apps, but building a trust layer that makes that digital self-sovereignty actually viable for everyone. So thank you again.
Yeah, 100%. And John, I'll move over to you. Closing thoughts, what you're excited about out of bank social standpoint, and certainly thoughts on DeRec.
Yeah, I think just like certainly the technologists in the transition from Web 1 to Web 2 cared about SSL and TLS and AJAX and all these things, and coalesced around making those things the interoperability layers of the internet. But from the regular user's perspective, they just wanted to get on a website, push a button, and a car shows up, or something happens. And so that's really what our focus has to be as builders in the space, is making every experience just feel intuitive, just feel native. And it's just going to become an expectation. Like, I'm going to expect that when I put data in a place, no single in 5 years or 3.5 or 4 years, I'm going to expect that when I put data somewhere, no single custodian is on the hook or is risking my data with holding that secret. And it's going to be distributed, and I'm going to be able to pick the helpers, or at minimum, I'm going to have, if I go into trusted ecosystems that I trust, I'm going to have thousands of helpers that get randomized. It's just going to happen behind the scenes. So I think that's what, from the DeRec becoming a universal standard, it will exchange the expectation, right? Like, when I push a button, I don't care about what's happening, but I do expect a car to show up in about 3.5 minutes. And so, and I expect the payment to happen as soon as I step out of the car. Those are the types of behavioral changes that I think people are going to start to expect. I'm not going to be subject to the data compromises or the secret breaches that I am now subject to. And so I think that is fundamentally the behavior and the expectation that consumers, businesses, people who utilize these systems are going to change. And from a bank social perspective, our primary goal is to enable both the institutions, the financial institutions, right? These regulated, long-standing, very secure systems. They already service people in a trusted way, in a way that people are comfortable with. That you're comfortable bringing, very important documents to a vault, right? To a deposit box. You're comfortable bringing millions of dollars into this financial institution. I think you'll be comfortable bringing secrets that are distributed across many of these institutions as helpers. And that's really where we're focused, are these new enablements that drive new experiences, that drive new ability to tokenize and create interoperability between ecosystems and value systems. So that's what I think behaviorally will change. And that's how I think we're adopting and enabling those behavioral changes in consumers and in businesses and in the institutions that support them.
Awesome. And then Lehman, I'll let you ramp us out here.
Yeah, Brandon, I love what you are building. This really is the future. John, I love what you are building. It really is the future. And it's fantastic that both of you are building in DeRec as a safety net and also as an opportunity for people to be helper as a service and make money off of that. This is so exciting. The whole future is being built here. And I would encourage anyone who's listening to go to DeRecAlliance.org. You can see all the stuff. You can take it all for free. There's information about it. There's actual code and repos on GitHub. You get it all for free. We have people that can help you integrate it into products, and you can get this safety net with very little effort. Little effort for the developer, and then you can make it invisible and zero effort for the user. All of that. And join the Alliance. For only $5K a year, you can be part of the Alliance, and you can help move it forward, and you can help influence which directions we go and what's in the standard and how it's used and how we spread the word. Do that. And if you don't want to do that, then at least contribute code. And if you don't want to do that, then just steal the code and use it, and we can help you. And so this is the future. And I just really want to thank everyone who's building the future and invite everyone to build it with us. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, DeRecAlliance.org. And this will be going live on at Genfinity.io on X as well. And you can go to Genfinity.io and check out all of the, I don't even know how many articles we have right now on DeRec, probably 15 or 20 and hundreds across the board. So I just wanted to, again, thank you to Lehman from the DeRec standpoint. John, thank you so much from a Bank Social standpoint. Brandon from Lace and IOHK and the whole Cardano ecosystem for this incredible conversation. For everybody watching, again, if you want to learn more or get involved, which you should, visit DeRecAlliance.org and check out the coverage that we have as well. Thank you all for joining us. And remember, the future of recovery isn't just coming, it's already live and growing. Hang out with me here for a second, gentlemen, to make sure I get this recording. And thank you guys so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.